My co-anchor, Ayanda Nyathi, is standing by. Ayanda, I believe you're in conversation with the DA leader, John Steenhuisen. Important questions to be asked here around the future of his own leadership, given how Mmusi Maimane was handled after the DA saw a dip in its support. Will the same fate belie John Steenhuisen if the same thing happens these elections?
That question and many others top of mind, Michelle, as we continue watching these results trickle in. I'll waste no time, jump straight into it. The DA's leader, John Steenhuisen, joining us now from the floor of the Rock, as it's commonly known. And John, it's great to see you. Thank you so much for making time to chat to us. Look, it's only about 18% of the national tally that's in so far, but that hasn't stopped a lot of people from really speculating about how things will go. Initial impressions is like it's showing that the DA's handle over your strongholds, like the Western Cape, is still firmly intact, but is lower than it was in 2016. Are you surprised?
No, I think we've done good governance there in those places. I think we're going to retain Midvaal with the majority. We're going to retain the city of Cape Town. I'm very, very pleased with that. And I think that particularly when one looks at the 2019 results, it's a significant comeback from 2019. We've been able to claw back support, but also doubling and sometimes trebling our support in ANC strongholds as well in large parts of the country. The Free State, in Mpumalanga, KwaZulu-Natal. We just won 2 wards off the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal. These are huge advances and achievements. It's early days yet, and we wait to see the full picture emerge. But if the current trend continues, I'm very confident we're going to be in for a very, very good election.
Yeah, and that's a big if, right, considering how much we still need to go. But among the questions being asked, John, as we speculate in some respects and build up scenarios, is whether or not there's any kind of conversation taking place within the Democratic Alliance around what would be the future of the leader of the organization in a context where you don't do well. Now, of course, this is coming off the back of how Mmusi Maimane was, in some respects, treated, according to some people. Well, is there a discussion about that?
No, because we're going to do well.
And if you don't?
We're going to do well. I know we're not going to do well. We've been running the most significant polling election during this election. I know that we're going to do well. I'm very, very confident that we're going to significantly grow off a very bad result in 2019. And in many parts of the country, I think we're going to even improve on our 2016 result. If I look at the 2 wards we took off the Freedom Front in Potchefstroom, again, we took them back. Making big inroads in ANC wards. I think there's a lot of wards still to come in. As I said, we've won 2 off the ANC already in eThekwini, plenty more to come. We've made a clean sweep in Phoenix. We've made a clean sweep in Chatsworth. These are all a very, very good sign for a good night ahead. I think it's far too early to start speculating about futures. I do think the one person who should be worrying, though, is Mr. Ramaphosa, because it looks like his party's in for a very, very bad election result.
Look, I mean, many people might say the same about the Democratic Alliance, but again, and that's the caveat we need to place here, it's still too early to tell. So let me ask my question this way. Would it be fair to have a discussion around the future of the leader of the Democratic Alliance in a context where we don't do as well as you'd hope?
Because the results aren't in yet. We'll have that conversation once the final scoreboard is up. I think it's completely premature to be having any type of discussion.
Yeah, but the question is, if that were to happen, would that be a fair discussion to be had?
No, I'm not in the business of speculation. Let's get the results on the board, and then we can see and to move from a basis of fact. I know we're going to have a good result. Certainly the returns that are coming in now, very positive, very significant. And I'm going to have grown the DA's vote off the last election's base. And I think that is a significant achievement.
Do you agree on the basis of principle at the very least that there needs to be some kind of accountability from the leader of the DA if you don't do as well as you think you will?
We're going to do well. This is a completely speculative argument that you're trying to have with me here. We're going to do well. You can ask me the question again when the final tally's up on the board, but I'm very confident we're going to do well in this election.
Right. Not going to get an answer from you about that question. Let's speak about how you feel the election was held nonetheless. I mean, there's been a lot of questions being posed about the IEC's state of readiness in the context that we're in at the moment. The DA, I imagine, had also raised a few concerns. How are you feeling about that?
No, well, we're very disappointed with the way the IEC conducted themselves yesterday. You've got 5 years to prepare for an election, and it was a complete and unmitigated disaster in many, many parts of the country. Their voter management devices were a complete failure. Long queues, people turned away. I don't think that they've got anything to be proud of for their conduct in this election. And I think that we're going to have a proper inquiry after this election, both at a parliamentary level, about what this Chapter 9 has actually been up to. You've got one job to ensure free and fair elections. If you can't get that right, then people have got to question what actually is going on at the IEC. I think a lot of people were disenfranchised yesterday because of the IEC's incompetence. I think that we've got some big, significant questions to be asking.
Yeah. And take us through what you imagine could be a remedy, given the fact that, the horse is already bolted in some instances, right? The election has already been held. The IEC has also conceded to some inefficiencies. From the DA's perspective, how do we fix that, given what's at stake?
Well, I think we need an overhaul at the IEC. I think we need to have a good, hard look at the organisation. I think they need to be hauled into Parliament. I think we need to have a parliamentary inquiry into how this Chapter 9 institution is functioning. They spent most of this year trying to avoid having an election. They told us we were going to be in the midst of the deepest grip of the fourth wave. Well, we've got the lowest transmission rates and infection rate in 2 years here in South Africa at the moment. They roped in a retired judge to try and bolster their case. It was only because the DA had the courage to go to court and ensure that we had this election this year. But I think that we've got to have a look at what preparation went into this and why we ended up with this unmitigated disaster. What makes me very cross, though, is that we warned them over the special vote period that there was a problem with those voter management devices. We said to them, these devices are not working, and when you have a big flow of people coming through, it's going to be problematic. That device wasn't heeded. They ran on like a bull into a china shop, and we ended up with a situation where I think we've disenfranchised a significant number of voters around the country because of it.
How worried are you that that might have a knock-on effect on how the DA specifically performs after this election?
Well, we need to do a VD by VD analysis. I mean, certainly there's 151 voting stations that we recognise that are significantly problematic. A number of these are DA stronghold areas, so we'll have to crunch the numbers and look at turnout vis-a-vis the last 2 elections, and then make some projection as to what the cost of it has actually been, and to then make sure that we take corrective action. But as you say, the horse has bolted. But I certainly think that this has to now trigger a proper and full inquiry into the IEC and what exactly is going on in that organisation. I mean, I think their credibility has been badly dented this year. They've not been good stewards of the Party Political Funding Act. They've not prepared well for this election, and I think that a lot of voters and political parties are incredibly frustrated with what happened yesterday in terms of making sure people could vote.
Yeah. You speak about the credibility of the IEC and by extension of the vote itself. A lot of discussion the morning after about the low voter turnout across the country. I mean, as a person with an interest in seeing robust democracies at play, A, what do you attribute this to? And B, I guess, in what ways do we get it right come the next election?
Well, I think that a lot of people are very disillusioned with the system. I think that we've got a broken system in South Africa. And having been around the country and seen the dysfunction in so many municipalities, I think a lot of people have given up hope that it can be set right. I mean, it's been a very tough argument to get people excited about their local municipalities again, when for many of them they've had no water, no electricity, sewage running down their streets. I think that we've got to focus a lot more on voter education, and particularly making that causal link between the way you vote and the way you live. We've shown very clearly where we govern that on all the metrics, life is better where the DA is in government. And I think we've got to make that case a lot more strongly over the come to encourage people that if they want to change their circumstances, they have to vote. I think we also have an a skewed view of the turnout. I think that a lot of the voter management devices, etc., we're not feeding back information. So we also want to see what that final tally is vis-a-vis turnout in other elections. Before I think we make a definitive call on it. Yeah.
You speak about disillusionment. How culpable do you think politicians are in creating that environment? In fact, a lot of people we spoke to actually have less trust in the politicians than they do in the democratic ecosystem itself.
Well, I think that when you have politicians who are corrupt, and I think when you have 10 years of state capture for which no one has been held accountable yet, no one's gone to jail, no one stayed in jail when they've been sent to jail, and there's been no major civil recoveries, I think it sets a very, very poor example for the rest of the country. And I think I'm not surprised some people are disillusioned, because we have a consequence management problem in South Africa. People do wrong, from Serafina, Viridine, Gupta Gate, state capture, the Sariti Commission, all of these things expose people in Kandla, but no one's ever held accountable. And I think that what we need in South Africa is a very good dose of democratic accountability, so that people can see there are consequences for wrongdoing. When they see politicians getting away with corruption, maladministration, tender fraud and the like, and seeing politicians getting richer while South Africans getting poorer, I think that feeds a disillusionment. So I think we need a good dose of consequence management in South Africa.
Right. Speaking about accountability, we are on the other side of electioneering. Quite frankly, it's in no one's hands now, but I guess the devices to finally get us a sense of how the vote actually turned out. Now that we're here, with the benefit of hindsight, any regrets in how you held out your campaigning?
No, not at all. I think we threw all at it. I think we had a very positive message of the DA gets things done. We focused on what we've done, where we govern, and our plan of action for municipalities where we would like to govern. I think we made a compelling case that the DA delivers and gets things done. That was backed up by evidence. And so I think that we've run a good campaign, and I think it's going to be reflected in the results.
Yeah, right. Very quickly before I do let you go, yesterday we also saw a situation involving the federal chair, Helen Zille, where it looked like she was, for lack of a better term, in a scuffle as she was asked to leave a certain voting station. We understand she's laying an assault charge now. What do you know about what actually took place?
Well, there we go. There's a very good example of how the IEC doesn't perform well. They put somebody who is unashamedly an ANC supporter as the presiding officer. If you go on the presiding officer's Facebook page, there she is in ANC regalia pushing a party line. On her social media pages, and yet she's now the presiding officer at she didn't like the fact that the DA was there. She didn't like the fact that Helen Zille was there.
The allegation that Helen Zille was actually campaigning while she was in the line.
True. She was engaging with voters in the line. That's not campaigning. It's asking people to stay in the line, not to go, not to leave. That's something the IEC should have been doing. And then you've got a police officer who was 3 times her size, essentially assaulting her. The charges have been laid. And I sincerely hope that the full might of the law will be exercised against that particular police officer. And I hope that his family and friends look at that footage with some circumspection about who they regard as a friend and a family member.
John Steenhuisen, thank you so much for speaking to us. Really do appreciate it. The leader of the Democratic Alliance there, John Steenhuisen, giving us his initial thoughts about how he reckons this election has actually gone. Again, just to emphasize, only about 18% or so of the votes are currently in, and that is simply not enough to even call this election, no matter how you look at it. It's not going to stop people, though, from trying to conceptualize the different combinations and permutations of scenarios, given, of course, what is at stake. We'll keep watching these numbers for you as they trickle in and have these important discussions with the leaders of these various political parties.